What's up, real deal? We on day 5 of Timothy Ferriter trial of his son. So we're going to continue on from here, okay?
Why don't you check? It's not the biggest deal in the world. This has gone on a while as it is, so another minute's not going to make any difference. Ms. Coakley, I was just raising with Ms. Murad the state's motion, or at least I thought you indicated you were going to file a motion in regard to additional opinions that the defense was attempting to introduce via Dr. Rappa's the testimony. Ms. Murad has indicated that she's not pursuing that anymore, so I just need to confirm that there's nothing for the court to decide in regard to that. Is that accurate? Okay, all right, good enough then. All right, so you want to call your next witness, and then we'll see. All right, and so just for planning purposes, give me a little bit of idea of what we're looking at today. I'm assuming this witness up front, Dr. Rappa, and then do you have any other witnesses besides the possibility of your client testifying this? Okay. It, it's been admitted into evidence already, or it's going to be part of? For 14 hours? All right. Do you know how much you do intend to play? Okay. All right. Yeah, I only asked not to infringe at all upon your defense, but only to get an idea as to what we're looking at in terms of logistics. Yeah. Be same type video that we've seen already? Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
there may be objections, Your Honor. I was provided a list of what they intended to offer about probably 9:30 last night. Earlier, I was provided a list with 3,000 videos that was approximately 50 hours long. I started to go through that, but now it's my understanding that's no longer what they intend. And so I haven't had a chance to look at what they offer. That larger list did have things that the state would object to. Okay. So just so let Your Honor know, I haven't had a chance to look at this 14-hour video that they now have indicated they're going to enter.
So I'll address that when and if you raise it. So it sounds to me like, Ms. Murad, a reasonable shot of you resting today. Is that, all right. And are you going to make the decision as to whether your client's going to testify before or after you publish the videos?
I don't have an answer to that, but I suspect we will know a little bit more during the lunch hour.
Okay.
And depending on the court's rulings, that'll sort of.
Okay. All right, good enough then. All right, I think we've addressed all the trial issues that I needed to address this morning. Anything else we need to address before we bring the jurors in? Use the mic, Mr. Sooner than later, we'll probably try to do it during the first break. Not the first break, but when we break for lunch, we'll spend a few minutes on that. Are there some issues on the jury instructions that I'm going to need to work through? You need to have a microphone.
So for the parental defense, it's our position that that the burden of persuasion, that once we present it, just like a self-defense, it is upon the state's burden to unprove it or to disprove, and just like self-defense.
Is there a standard that addresses that? Because I really don't intend to depart from the standard if there's a standard.
Yeah. So the jury instruction actually.
Well, here's what we're going to do. I just wanted to know if there's an issue. I will address it then when I bring up the instructions for consideration. We'll probably do that at the lunch hour and take whatever time is necessary to do it then. But and then just be prepared to tell me if there's a standard instruction at that time, and then I'll hear argument on everything. All right. So, Ms. Murad, are you ready to call your next witness in? All right, you may do so. Let's go ahead and bring the jury out now. All rise. All right, everyone may be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome back. I hope everyone had a good restful relaxation for the long holiday. I hope it was a long holiday for all of you. It was for the court. So with that being said, we are still in the defense portion of the case at this point. And with that, Ms. Murad, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense called Agent Chris Lowe.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, Ms. Murad, you may begin at your convenience.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Agent Lowe. I know you've been here before, so I don't want to belabor your background, but could you restate your name for the record, please?
Yes, I am Christopher Lowe with Jupiter Police Department.
And in this particular case, you received a Dropbox link of the Ring camera videos from Ring. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I just wanted to clarify a few things for the jury regarding that Ring camera.
Yes,
So it's my understanding that some of the videos from the living room are missing. Is that correct?
I cannot confirm that there's any missing videos.
Okay. We don't have any videos after January 9th of videos from the living room, correct?
Within the folder, I'm going to notate the
Go
folder
ahead.
name. Folder 24738902, which is a depiction of the living room. The files encompass January 5th through January 9th.
Okay. And of course, the jury has seen videos from January 5th all the way to January 28th. So it's fair to say that from January 10th to January 28th, there are no videos from the living room, correct?
As provided by Ring, correct.
Have you had an opportunity to view at least one of those cameras from the Ring camera that was placed in the living room?
Yes,
Okay. So when you look out into that camera, you see the living room in front, correct?
correct.
It's kind of like behind a TV, it seems.
It's in a corner.
Okay. So in front of it is like a sofa. Is that fair to say?
Yes,
And then the kitchen is behind it, correct?
yes.
And then sort of off to the right, you see the dining room table.
Okay, I can agree to the sofa, the kitchen.
Okay. And do you recall if you can also see the dining room table from that angle?
I don't recall that portion.
Okay. Is it fair to say that no other Ring camera angle shows you the living room, kitchen, and dining room table other than that one?
Of what I observed, that's correct.
I also want to talk about, because the state played a lengthy video with the epoch time and UTC time. Could you explain again to this jury? So my understanding is that the file names provided in that Dropbox are, for the most part, a series of numbers. Is that right?
That's correct.
And those series of numbers are indicative of something called epoch time.
Yes.
And could you explain to the jury again how you get from that file name to the date and time?
Right. So in regards to the Unix epoch time that I had previously spoken about, that number itself is a unit of time starting from January 1st, 1970, and it can be notated in seconds or milliseconds. And you can take that number, place it into just a simple converter online, and it'll produce the UTC time, which you can then convert to the Eastern Standard Time.
Understood. So the video that the jury saw, there was a montage of sort of a number of videos from inside of Ronan's room. Those are in UTC time. What is the difference between UTC time and Eastern time?
So for the time in which we're concerned, being in January, it would be a difference of 5 hours for Eastern Standard Time.
So if something is, let's say, 4:35 p.m. UTC, what is it in Eastern time?
It would be 11:30.
So if Ronan's getting into bed at 4:30 UTC time, that's actually 5 hours later. Or I'm sorry, 5 hours earlier.
Earlier, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the Eastern time is earlier.
Yes.
Okay, understood. So the bed example was not a great one. Prior to this, did I give you an example of a file number in this case to convert into UTC time and Eastern time?
Yes,
Okay. And was that file number 164-138-414-4000?
yes, that's correct.
So how do we get from that to the UTC time and then to the Eastern?
So simply placing that number into the converter, as I mentioned, it produced a UTC time of 12:02 and 24 seconds PM. Then you just subtract you subtract 5 hours to get to 7:02 and 24 seconds.
Are there also file numbers that are not in epoch time?
Yes,
And those file numbers, I believe, start with like 70505.
generally, yes, that's correct.
What unit of measurement are they in?
That's unknown to me.
Okay. And are those file numbers also indicative of a time and date?
Are those file numbers?
Mhm.
Not that I know of.
Okay. Is there a process by which you can determine the time and date from those file numbers?
Yes.
What is that process?
So as I previously mentioned, there are 11 subfolders within that return from Ring. Okay. Within 6 of those subfolders, there's an individual file in each one. When that file is converted into an Excel format, it produces a timestamp associated with the files that begin in the 705. So a simple conversion into an Excel file provides the timestamps necessary to associate.
Thank you. All the videos that you were provided from Ring in that Dropbox are, for the most part, I know there's some that aren't, in 60-second intervals, correct?
For the most part.
And it's fair to say that there's no video of sort of 24-hour monitoring of what's going on in the home. It's just sort of those 60-second spurts that we all have to piece together when there's movement.
Correct.
Do you know why from January 10th to January 28th, there are no videos of that living room Ring camera?
I do not.
Okay. And are you just relying on what Ring provided to you?
That's correct.
But it is fair to say that the living room camera prior to that did exist, right?
Correct. From what I received January 5th to the 9th.
And there's no video on the 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th of the Ferriters taking that down that you're aware of?
I did not review that camera in that specificity. I didn't review each
Okay.
of those videos. No.
Understood. No further questions for this one.
All right, any cross, Ms. Coakley?
You don't know why there isn't additional videos, right?
Correct.
They could have turned off the camera, right?
There could be a number of reasons. Correct.
Then that's one of them, right? They could have turned it off, correct?
Correct.
They could have unplugged it.
That's possible.
They could have, it could have just broken, correct?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
All right, any redirect?
Since it's movement activated, if they did come in and turn off the camera or take it out, you would suspect to see movement there, right?
Overruled.
That's possible to capture that video.
Okay. And in this particular case, Ms. Coakley gave you a number of options of it could have been this, it could have been that. It's fair to say you have no idea. You just have what you have from Ring.
Correct.
So you have no ability to say that the Ferriters turned that off, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, they didn't turn off any of the video in their son's own room, right? During that time period. There's no evidence of that.
I cannot determine whether or not a camera is turned off.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murad. Is this witness now excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, sir, that concludes your testimony and you're excused from further proceedings in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Murad, I'll call your next witness, please.
Dr. Sheila Rappa.
And you're doing the direct, Ms. Murad?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Murad, you may begin at your convenience.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you introduce yourself to us, please?
Sure, my name is Sheila Rappa.
Dr. Rappa, what do you do for work?
I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist.
I want to start with your sort of experience. Can you take us through your educational experience to become a clinical and forensic psychologist?
Yes, so I received a bachelor's degree in psychology in the year 1990. I went on to get my master's at Obizu University in 1994, and then I completed my doctorate in 1999, also at Obizu University. I did my internship at Miami Children's Hospital. I did the inpatient and the outpatient unit, and I did my residency at Atlantic Shores Hospital. I was licensed in Florida at the year 2000.
When you talk about some of your sort of work experience, can you take us through specifically the experience that you've had working with children with severe sort of behavioral issues?
Sure. My first introduction to children with severe trauma or severe behavioral issues was right after I got my master's degree. I had to do clinical hours, and I did them at a place called Kids in Distress that is in Fort Lauderdale. At Kids in Distress, it's a not-for-profit, but they take in all types of children, normally children that have been removed from their homes due to severe neglect or any kind of childhood trauma. So Kids in Distress would have any children from birth, all the way up. The ones I worked with were probably up to the age of 13 at that time. So I did that for my clinical hours, and then they hired me, so I started working there, and I worked a lot with children at that facility that were just severely traumatized, had diagnosis of reactive attachment disorder, had diagnoses of PTSD, just different types of childhood disorders. When I did my internship, or when I chose what internship I wanted to do, I really did want to focus on children, and I wanted to focus on victims. So Miami Children's Hospital was available to me, and that's one of the places that I applied to do my internship and was accepted. Miami Children's Hospital at that time had an outpatient unit, and they also had a locked residential unit. So I not only saw the children that were on the outpatient unit and did therapy with family and children, a lot of trauma. Also, there were the children that were on the inpatient unit that were actually locked inside the psychiatric facility because they were a harm to themselves or others. After I finished my internship, I quickly, within probably a year, started working at Chrysalis Health. Chrysalis Health is a community mental health center, serves about 3,000 clients a week, so very busy mental health center. Best known in the community for working with trauma and children and adolescents that are exhibiting behavioral problems, PTSD, any type of diagnosis pretty much that you can imagine. When I started at Chrysalis, I started just doing therapy, doing assessments. And then as I continued to work at Chrysalis, I became the clinical director. And right before I left Chrysalis, within like 3 or 4 years, I was their chief clinical officer. That meant I had to oversee probably 200, maybe 250 therapists that were doing the work in the families, in the homes, with the children, with the traumatized individuals. I also had to do the clinical programming for our group homes. We had residential homes, which were group homes for adolescents that had kind of failed out of the foster care system. Nobody would take them, so they put them into our group homes. Severe behavioral disturbances, a lot of trauma there. And I oversaw all their clinical work for that. And then pretty much after that, I just continued with my private practice. I started a private practice quickly after I got licensed, and worked at Chrysalis, also did a little bit in my private practice, but eventually the private practice kind of took over, and now I'm in private practice full time, and I only do forensic work. No more clinical work for me.
How long in your career did you do clinical work? So when did you go full time into the forensic?
I did clinical work from 1995, probably until 2010, maybe.
So pretty recent.
Yeah.
That was your consistent practice, was doing clinical work. Is that fair to say?
It was. I really, really love the clinical work. I like being in the gutter kind of with the families and helping them figure things out and with children. My practice just got too busy and I couldn't do clinical work. I couldn't maintain the consistency anymore.
What experience do you have working with parents of children who have sort of early life trauma and severe behavioral issues?
Most of the parents that I have worked with that if you're going to talk about really significant trauma or really significant abuse, the parents that I would most likely work with would be foster parents or adoptive parents. There's not a whole lot of biological parents that I had to work with where their children were very severely abused or neglected, although there have been some. But most of it is foster care people that get their foster care parents that get these children and don't know what to do, or adoptive parents that get these children and they really just don't know what to do.
Now, your doctorate is a PsyD, so you're a psychologist, correct?
Correct.
This jury heard from the state's expert, Wade Myers, who is a psychiatrist. Can you explain to us the difference between psychology and psychiatry?
Sure. So psychiatrists are medical doctors. They actually go to medical school, just like, your PCP would have gone to. They go to medical school. And then after medical school, they decide that they're going to specialize in psychiatry. And so they do rotations and get training specifically in psychiatry. Psychiatrists are probably best known for giving medication. So they do a lot of medication management. They know what types of medication to give for what type of psychological disorder. And really, some psychiatrists do some therapy, but most psychiatrists really deal with medication and medication management. Psychologists are a PhD. Mine is a PsyD because I'm a doctor of psychology, but it's easier to understand as a PhD. So it's a doctorate that you earn, and you have to have your bachelor's in some sort of human behavior study. Then you would get your master's in psychology and then your doctorate in psychology. So you're studying human behavior throughout. And really, if you include your internship and your residency, getting your doctorate takes about 12 years. It took me about 12 years.
As a psychologist, assuming that you actually evaluate a patient, are you able to come to a diagnosis in the same way that a psychiatrist is?
We do the same things, except the psychologist will do psychological testing. Normally, psychiatrists do not do psychological testing. They might do screeners to kind of assess and see where they're at in terms of diagnosis. But psychologists do psychological testing. Other than that, pretty much we arrive to a diagnosis the same way.
In general, and we'll talk more specifically briefly, but sort of in general, what is psychological testing?
Psychological testing can encompass many different things. It can be educational testing. We want to see someone's IQ. We want to see their achievement, how they're doing in school. It can also be leaned toward figuring out if someone has a psychological disorder. Does somebody have depression or anxiety? Are they bipolar? Are they schizophrenic? Testing will help with that. It can also tell us personality makeup. How does this person function in the world around other people and function in general? So it really depends on your referral question, what types of testing that you're going to be doing, but there's a plethora of tests that we can give for all different types of things.
Those tests that you give, are they standardized and accepted in the community as being able to render, I guess, data that helps you determine those different things that you were talking about, like IQ? So if you're giving a test and some other psychologist is giving a test for the same thing, is it going to be the same test?
Yes.
Okay.
So the tests are standardized. The tests also have validity scales to make sure that you're not only giving the test reliably in the right way, but the test taker is taking them in a valid way. So these tests are more objective measures. It's not just, somebody sitting back and looking at a case and then giving a diagnosis, but the testing really helps solidify that diagnosis.
I want to turn our attention to this specific case now. So you were hired by my law firm in this case, is that correct?
Yes.
And you're being paid for your time at an hourly rate, is that
Yes,
correct?
That's correct.
Is that common in your field?
Yes.
Okay. Are experts normally reviewing materials and coming to court for free?
No.
Okay. I want to go through what you reviewed in this case. Can you take the jury through that?
Sure, I can. I had to make a list because there's a lot. All right. So here are the records that I reviewed in this case. I had Ronan's early childhood records. I had photos of him as a child, and he had scabies on his body.
Sustained. I've seen your objection as she's testifying from the page in front of her. Yep. All right. Ms. Murad, you may proceed.
Thank you. Dr. Rappa, you can continue listing those items off.
Okay, the Department of State medical records, records from the Family Care International Clinic, and records from a Vietnam doctor. I had records from Family Counseling Associates, from Kathleen Martin, from 2015 and 2016. I had records from Dr. Rickenbacker from 2019, medical records from other providers, 2019 to 2013. Then I had more from 2014, 2017, and more from 2021. I had Ronan's school records from Immaculate Heart Academy, and there were emails in there between the Ferriters and the school staff. I also had his school records from Basis Academy, and again, emails between the Ferriters and school staff. An April 2022 clinical summary by Kenny Miller, who diagnosed him with reactive attachment disorder. I also had his non-psychiatric medical records from 2009, 2021. I had a memorandum. It was created either by the mom or the dad, I'm not sure who, detailing the efforts that they took to get Ronan help from 2012 all the way up to 2022. I had a photo of a fractured shoulder from NOLA.
Sustained. You can state what you receive or reviewed, ma'am, but you can't go into the details of what that document was.
Okay.
You may continue.
A neuropsych testing. I had an incident report from Devereaux Behavioral Health from 2022. I had Baker Act records from JFK and Central Behavioral Health in spring and summer of 2022. Emails between former foster parents in ChildNet. Interview transcripts of Alan Anderson, Kellen McCoy, and Steve Johnson. I had the CPT interviews of Ronan, Fiona, and Nola. I had both the videos and the transcripts. I had Ronan's deposition in this case, also the transcript and the video. Fiona's deposition in this case, the transcript and the video. Ronan's interview with Detective Sharp, the transcript and the video. Documents produced by a state expert. And I also watched several hours of Ring video, both the Ring video inside the room and outside the room in the home. I had the same packet that was sent to the state expert, Dr. Myers, and I had the deposition and trial testimony of Dr. Myers and the trial testimony of Ronan.
Thank you very much. So I want to talk about also what you could not review. Were you able to evaluate Ronan in this case?
No.
And was a request made for that?
Yes.
Sustained. Jury is instructed to disregard the last answer in question. You may continue, Ms. Murad.
Understood. It's fair to say that you were not, well, I will let that go. So you had an opportunity to review Wade Myers's trial testimony, correct?
Yes.
So I want to sort of start with your opinions regarding the Ferriter's actions. So do you have an opinion as to whether the Ferriter's actions were therapeutically correct?
Yes.
What's that opinion?
I think the Ferriter's actions were against anything that we would ever tell someone to do therapeutically.
Is it fair to say that the way the Ferriters handled this situation probably exacerbated Ronan's behavioral issues?
Yes.
But were those behaviors that Ronan had caused by the Ferriters, in your opinion?
No, I don't believe so.
I'll get into the specifics of that in a minute. Does the fact that Tim Ferriter handled the situation with Ronan as inappropriately as he did, does that change any of the opinions that you've come to in this case?
No.
Why not?
Well, I mean, I think that what we see as a child early on that had a lot of difficulty with internal controls. Most children by the age of 5, if you want to kind of push it to 6, have already learned how to control themselves. They can control their behaviors. They don't tantrum. They can control, if they feel like they want to do something, they can control impulses. But I did see through the records that this was a child that had no internal controls. And lots of times when a parent has a child that has no internal controls, they do try to put external controls around that child. This, of course, was beyond the pale, but those external controls are not something that is an unusual thing for a parent to do if they feel like the child is a danger to themselves, others, or is doing something so impulsively, and they need to keep an eye on them.
Okay. I want for the jury to establish sort of the timeline that I think is relevant in this case. So I'm going to state Ronan's testimony and let me know if it's correct. And this is the testimony from the trial that you reviewed.
Approach.
I really want to know how this is going to turn out, y'all. I really do. And he always right. This child right here. I believe he guilty. Who wants to put a child in a box? Built, you get it built from Home Depot, and it's not even really built. Just
All right, the objection is sustained. Ms. Murad, you can rephrase the question. Thank you.
So I want to go through some of the underlying facts that you relied on in coming to your opinion, okay?
Yes.
And specifically about when locks were placed on Ronan's door, okay? So is it your understanding, or were you assuming this when coming to your opinion, that that Pierce was born on February 28th of 2019?
Yes.
And that a room in the garage in Arizona for Ronan was made about a week prior to that,
Yes.
and that a lock was placed on a room inside the home in Arizona that Ronan lived in while Tracy was pregnant.
Yes.
Given that Pierce was born in late February, is it fair to say that that has to be between about May 2018 and February 2019 at some point?
Yes.
Okay. I want to start by talking about some of the facts that Wade Myers relied on in his testimony. You already stated that you reviewed his trial testimony and his deposition, correct?
Yes.
Wade Myers testified that Ronan did not have any substantial behavioral issues before the age of 8 or 9. Without getting into any specifics, is that a true fact based on your review of the records?
Sustained.
mm,
Judge, can we approach on this?
You can.
come on, y'all.
All right, the objection is sustained without prejudice, Ms. Murad, for you to rephrase.
Without getting into specific acts, have you reviewed evidence that shows that there were in fact behavioral issues prior?
Sorry, I need you to approach again.
Mm-mm. Sorry about that, y'all. So, what y'all think so far? Real deal about what's going on with this witness. God, it's taking them that long. They doing the whole case. But yeah, I think what I'm gonna do. I wanted to hear the rest of this young lady. Let me stop her. She got to go. But her testimony is good. So yeah, I'm gonna go on and stop it right here and pick up on it because I gotta go back to work. So I'll stop it right here. Okay. We'll get back into it, okay? Thanks for